Well, today I'm with Mark Trengove. Hi, Mark.
Hello there. Hi.
How's things? You okay?
I'm okay, thank you. Yes, I'm a bit traumatised because I've just done 3 English dewies and I'd vowed never to do English dewies and I've done 3 in a day. So you'll have to forgive me if I feel a bit traumatised anyway.
Well, congratulations on that, Mark. We'll get you into bagging the English dewies before you know what.
Oh, well, you'd have to work hard.
Well, the reason I'm with Mark today, we're up in the Yorkshire Dales. You can just see a little bit of Melham Tarn in the background. And we're here to talk about listings of European peaks. Now, before we do that, Mark, because you have your own website with various listings of European hills on, it may be quite nice to lay a little bit of background, partly about yourself, but then to go on to the website and the hill lists. So as far as the hills are concerned, Mark, how did you sort of discover them and discover the joy of hill walking?
Well, I was born in Croydon, which is not well known for its hill bagging opportunities. It was very late in life I started, actually, back in 1996, in fact. We moved up to Mold in North Wales, because my job brought me up there. And I went off to the Lake District with a friend of mine, a Scottish friend, and we did a couple of days, and we did Coniston Old Man, I think was one of the first ones we did. And I just got the bug like we all do, and it's never left me since, you know. So yes, it started in the English Lake District, but it's Wales I'm more concentrated on, I must admit, than England over the last few years.
And what about hill lists? Some of your earliest memories of the hill list that you encountered?
Well, I think it was obviously Munro's, like everybody does, but because I was so active in England and Wales, like I think most people, I was looking for some kind of list that covered all of Great Britain. And of course Alan Dawson's list pops up, as it always does for so many people, because it's there on the bookshelves in most of the major bookshops. So then the Marilyn bagging began, you know, and then on to humps after that.
Well, of course, you also compile your own listings,
yes.
Don't you? When did that start?
I think it actually started from taking European holidays and being in areas in the French Alps, for example, and wondering, well, wonder if that's a Marilyn over there or not, and that sort of thing. And I then got in contact with a German guy who was quite a famous lister called Eberhard Jogalski, who lives in southern Germany, and he persuaded me to have a go. And I had some not very good maps of the French Vosges, so I had a go at those. And that was, I think, the first list I did. It was a bit rough and ready, but it was a list of all the 3,000-foot tops in the Vosges in France, and it sort of developed from there. I then went on to think, well, I might as well do the Alps while I'm here, the French Alps. So that's when all the lists started for the French Alps, which I've sort of left rather abandoned recently. I'll get back to them one day, I expect.
So with those early listings, were they using prominence as well?
Oh, always prominence, yes. I've always been a prominence person.
Yeah,
yes.
You haven't been tempted by subjective listings?
Well, I have actually done one recently on the website for Wales. There's some new volumes out by John Gillam on the mountains of Snowdonia. And I wrote to John and said, would you mind if I did a list out of a subjective list like the Wainwrights? And he said yes. So it's there now sitting on the website, on the Welsh page.
Now, of course, you mentioned the website, and I mentioned it earlier on. When did that originate?
Well, it had an ancestor before it. I had a European website before that, but it wasn't a very good one. It was very rough and ready. Then by an American friend, I was told that Google were doing some nice, easy-to-use type websites, which were free. So I transferred a lot of the stuff across that I'd done already onto the new Google site, and that's where it's developed really from its since, you see.
So what kind of listings were on the original website?
Again, it was my French work, mainly the French Alps, the Mont Blanc Massif and lots of the other ones as well, and the Vosges as well. And I was also getting in contact via email with various European people who were doing some listing work. I mentioned Eberhard Jogalski. I also met up with a guy called Piotr Mielus, who's very much a Tatra bagger in Poland. And he's given me some lists which will appear on the website too. So I've built up some connections with other European people who are into bagging. It's not a big thing in Europe yet, bagging, but it will get bigger, you know.
So from the original website, you mentioned that it's now transferred to, is it a Google account? Or?
It's a Google one, yes, Google Sites, yeah.
How can you access that? What's the website address?
That's a very good question. It's if you just put Euro Peak List on Google, it should come up as the first option there. Yeah. That's the easiest way into it. I can't remember the actual URL itself, but if you go put it in on Euro Peak List, you'll get it pretty quickly.
Why did you actually go down the website route?
Because it's so flexible, you know, and you can always add to it, change things and everything else. I mean, unlike the poor nuttals who keep on having to change their books after all your surveys, when you've got a website, of course, you can change things pretty quickly. So that was really where it started there. But then the important thing, I think, when it really developed was when I linked up with a chap called David Stone, who've been doing some very nice formatting of some of the lists on there. And I had some Austrian stuff from Clem Clements, which I wanted to get up because there was nothing really covering Austria. And I approached David Stone and said, would you mind taking this on and doing some nice booklets for this? And he was very keen to do it. So that was the first new ones on the website, were the 3,000 metre summits in Austria and the 2,500, and it sort of developed from there.
Now, I know through conversation earlier on today, Mark, you mentioned the name of David Stone. Now, this is the same David Stone that's been working with Mark
That's
Jackson.
right, it's the David Stone.
Yes,
we owe a lot to him. Yeah.
So, and what does he do? He do?
He's very much a formatter.
Yeah.
He has the eye for that kind of detail and putting it into a very professional format.
Yeah.
And he does all this work for free, which is, really all very grateful for.
Now, I know one of the unique features about your website as far as hill listings are concerned, that with the help of David Stone, you've actually set something up and that you can print off your own booklet with
That's the idea.
accompanying hill
Yes,
list.
it's the concept behind it eventually is that you'll be able to download. There's a downloadable version you can just have as an ordinary list, but you can do it in booklet version as well. So you've got something handy you can take away with you on the hill itself.
Well, for the purposes of this interview, Mark, it may be quite nice because the possibilities arise that we could actually do a future.
Yes, you warned me about that.
Yeah,
yes.
a future video just on that, because I think that's well worthwhile. Very, very interesting. But for now, if we concentrate on the European peaks, so what kind of listings have you got up on your website?
Right, let's see. Well, I mean, I started off, there were lots of French ones which aren't in booklet form, so there's quite a lot of Marylands in the Alps, covering quite a lot of the Alps now. There'll be more later on as well. I then moved on to Austria. And I said there's a 3,000 and 2,500 metre peaks then. I'd like to get a 2,000 metre. These were actually, I didn't do the list myself for this. It was Clem Clements' work, because I've been working in association with him, because Clem doesn't do the internet, so I'm sort of his publisher, you could say, on this. But I do my own listing work as well. For example, recently, I've just put up yesterday, in time for this interview, so this is a first, a press release. There's the hills of Malta. So anybody who's stuck on a beach in Malta who fancies doing some hill bagging in Malta, there's a few hills for you to climb there anyway. There's a few humps on the island.
I've looked at Malta the last year or two, so possibly I need to get the booklet,
well,
don't
on
I?
the website, certainly, yes.
Highly recommended for Malta goers.
The other thing I'm keen on, actually, is opening up Eastern Europe, because everybody knows about Austria and Switzerland and the hills there. But there's some really superb mountain peaks to do further east, so that's why I particularly concentrate on Poland. I mean, I know Poland quite well. Anyway, my wife is half Polish, and we have relatives. She has relatives over there, so we go and stay quite a lot. So I've got to know Poland better than many European countries. I think great place it is. So there will be some new Polish lists going up in the next few weeks, I hope, or maybe months actually. Again, these were ones that were done by my mate Peter Mielis, who lives in Warsaw, and he didn't do subs and things on it, so I've tidied up the list and made it into the normal sort of format. So there's Polish lists. There was one of the 2,000 metre peaks of Slovakia that went up recently as well. I'd like to get across Europe at 2,000 metres, I think. So I'm currently working on a Greek list, which is going to take some time to put together. So there'll be something there on the 2,000 metre peaks in Greece as well for people who are bored with the beaches.
Now, as far as the prominence is concerned for all of these various listings, Mark, I know earlier on today you were telling us about how many Marylands there are, or lack of Marylands within sort of Netherlands, Belgium.
Yes, very few around there. Yes, only one in Belgium, in all of the Benelux countries.
So, and of course, for the uninitiated, a Maryland is
150 metres of prominence.
Yeah, so
drop, as we have a way to say it.
So there's only one in.
Only one, and it's not the highest hill actually in Belgium.
Yeah.
The Belgian list will be coming out shortly. It's being checked by a colleague at the moment in Belgium.
Yeah.
Who is one of the people who does the SOTA, the radar, the radio sites.
Yes.
So he's having a look at the thing.
So,
there's about a dozen humps in 100 metre prominences in Belgium.
Yeah.
So there'll be a list of those going up shortly as well.
What about other amazing sort of European hill list facts?
Hill list facts, that's a good one.
Belgium?
Well, Belgium, the fact that, yes, that there's only one Maryland there, and that if Belgium splits in two, so that we have two countries, Flanders and Wallonia, as may happen, Flanders will be left without a single hump within it. It will be one of the few countries in Europe, along with the Vatican City, I think, where there's not a single 100 metre prominence in the whole of the country. Even the Netherlands has got two. So it would be a very select group if they do split apart anyway.
Have you taken the listings up into the Scandinavian countries at all?
Well, it will be. In fact, they're being listed at the moment. My mate Andy Tompkins is a great one for Norway. He knows a lot about Norway and done some listing up there. So he's actually working at the moment on a list of the 2,000 metre peaks of Scandinavia, Scandinavia, which will cover Norway, Sweden, and the couple which are out on Iceland as well too. So they'll be covered as well eventually.
Are you tempted in the future, Mark, to go outside of Europe to
No, I think
listings?
I'll stick to Europe.
Yeah.
I'm a European in heart.
And there's enough to be going on.
There's so much
isn't
to do
there?
there, I must admit.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a lifetime's work there, you know.
Yeah.
I might venture over towards the borders of Asia, because I do fancy listing the Caucasus sometime or something like that, which are almost European. You know. But,
Now, the prominence factors that you're working on, obviously you've mentioned the category of Marilyn, category
Yes.
of hump, but you're also talking about other different formats, aren't you?
it tends to be either 150 metres or 100 metres.
Yes.
There are some leaflets of majors. I'd like to get all of the majors sorted out in Europe too, and available in downloadable leaflets for each country.
And of course,
So they'll be available.
the criteria for a major is?
It's 600 metres of prominence.
Yes,
Yeah. It roughly equates. There was a sort of international discussion over the web between the Americans, who work it out on whatever is near. It'd be 2,000 feet, I think they take for majors over there. So we agreed to differ slightly, but we made it 600 metres, which is pretty close in Europe to what they do over there. So it's international negotiations are going on.
And how do you pick what sort of country and what list to do next? Is it sort of quite ad hoc, or have you got a plan?
Depends on the maps to some extent too. I mean, I've always been keen to do one of Greece. My degree is in Greek many years ago, so I knew the country from the archaeological point of view. I haven't really walked the hills there, so I will in the future, I'm sure, God willing. But with Greece, there's some very good maps that have come out of Greece by Anavasi, hiking maps of Greece, which weren't available before. Before that, they're all military secrets, being kept from the Turks, so you couldn't get that kind of decent mapping. But there are now, so Greece has opened up as a mapping area. I mean, one of the basic principles, I like to do it where there are paper maps for people, so that they can go on the hill with the right map and not have to rely on something on the internet.
Well, it's almost a separate subject, but obviously it has direct influence upon what you're doing.
Yeah.
But as far as European countries are concerned, in your opinion, what countries have the best mapping?
I would say France. I think French maps are actually better than UK maps. I know there'll be people shoot me for saying such a thing, but I find for hiking purposes and also for prominence listing that they are really good. They're one of the few countries that can actually manage, even in the Alps, to do 10-metre contouring. The Swiss do as well, and they're very good maps as well. But the Swiss maps tend to be more works of art and not so good for hiking purposes. So if I was choosing a country, I think I'd choose France. But I'm a Francophile anyway. Apologies to the viewers for this.
What about countries that don't have very good mapping?
Spain. It's getting better,
Yeah.
and the Catalonia has broken away by itself and does some very good maps now, but the rest of Spain is not so good, and Italy are pretty poor as well.
Yeah.
But even in those places, because the old Soviet maps are now available to buy, you can actually sometimes use some of the Soviet maps for these areas, which are much better than the maps in the local country, as long as you can read Russian.
And what about the future, Mark?
Well, I say I'm working on Greece, which will be some way away. Eventually I'd like to get some kind of lists of the highest hills in every European country. You don't get into discussions of where Europe ends, but I'll worry about that one later. So the tricky ones are going to be places like Italy, where the maps aren't so good. But it'd be nice to get something for every country in Europe eventually, including Estonia and all those ones up there, you know.
So just before we close off, a quick reminder of how to access your website again.
Right, so the easiest way is look for Euro Peak List on Google, and you'll go pretty straight there.
And it's highly recommended, so anybody viewing this, make sure that you access Mark's website. Well, Mark, it's been fascinating listening to you talking about the listings of European peaks today. So Mark Trengove, many thanks.
Thank you.